What is going on, everyone? Welcome to yet another episode of the Schoch Factor Podcast on the D1 Baseball Network, where this week we have a very exciting one for you. Where, first off, we are going to start things off by being joined by someone who is very smart and very good at baseball, in Duke's Ben Miller, who transferred into Duke this season from Penn. He's a Durham native, grew up in the area, went to Forest View Elementary School, which is important because this week he went back and read to some of the kids, had his third grade teacher come out and throw the first pitch to him, and had that third grade class out to the game. It was a really cool moment and just a really cool event that he did, providing that really cool experience for these kids. Just a great way to grow the game of college baseball. So, of course, after doing all of that and having a ton of success this season, he's hitting well over 400, and we're about 5 weeks, almost 6 weeks into the season now, which is absolutely insane. But you want to talk about a way to grow the game. Make a bunch of kids come to one of your games, and that's going to do it. That's got a pretty good chance of doing it. And then moving along, we have another guy who grew the game, and he did so in essentially his own household by convincing his brother to join him at the University of Maryland. We have Eddie Hacopian, who, of course, the Hacopian family, their name runs deep with the University of Maryland baseball tradition. Their dad, Derek Hacopian, was the ACC Player of the Year back in his day for the University of Maryland Terrapins. He was another guy who hit over 400. But we talked to Eddie about, his competitive nature, what it's like playing with his little brother, and just what this year has meant to him and to the Hacopian family. It's been really cool, and they're awesome people. So it was really exciting to get to catch up with them. But we will have all that and more coming up on this episode of the Schoch Factor Podcast. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. We will take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors, but after that, we will be back with Ben Miller. Have you heard of the 2025 Soldier Tank BB Core Baseball Bat by Soldier Sports? This isn't just any bat, it's lighter and hotter than any of its predecessors. This is thanks to its infused alloy technology that allows an ultra big, ultra hot sweet spot. Crafted from over 2.5 years of research and development, the Soldier Tank is the perfect blend of speed and power. Designed for both power and contact hitters, it features a formula for success. Speed times mass times impact equals extreme power. I've seen it swung. Even the mishits have juice with the Soldier Tank. The bat is priced at an incredible $311, which is well worth it, in my opinion, to be swinging the top scoring BB Core bat ever. They're selling out fast though, so head over to soldiersports.us to secure yours today. But we are back with the Schoch Factor Podcast, and we are back in a very fun, very exciting way, a smart and good at baseball way. We are joined by Penn transfer to Duke, Ben Miller. Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you taking the time. The flexibility is impressive. I think I messaged you probably around noon. It's 2:20 p.m. and we are making it happen. So that is to be appreciated. But I got a comment right off the bat. I know you don't judge a book by its cover, and we'll get into books later, but right off the bat, we see your mustache on this podcast, and we see it is long, it is glorious. Is that all natural? This is it, and it's just full glory right now?
Yeah, this is it. You're catching it about as bad as you're ever gonna catch it. But I figured now's the right time in my life to do this if I'm ever gonna do it. Probably not gonna have another opportunity to. So I've got the baseball excuse whenever anyone asks questions about it. So I'm just trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal stuff. So when did the mustache start? Did it start as a superstition? And you're like, you know what, we're just gonna rock it, or was it like, you know what, I've always wanted to rock this. I can say, hey, it's a superstition. We're just gonna roll with it.
No, so I actually did something similar my junior year at Penn. I grew it out a little bit and would try to wax it up, but knew that I had a little more in there. So I decided this year I was going to run it back. For my mom, I waited until after our first media day in the fall to start it. So was clean shaven for that, and then I think that was maybe the end of October. So I've been growing it out ever since then.
That's respectful. Good son move, if I can tip my cap to that first right off the bat. But I gotta say, it's an impressive mustache. It's a slippery slope, though. I remember in high school, I always wanted a mullet. I told myself, okay, I'm going to get a mullet and say, you know what? We'll stop having a mullet when I pitch bad. And here I am still with my Bob Saget style mullet where it's evolved and it's grown with me, but I don't think it'll ever leave me. So you might accidentally slip, fall, and have a mustache the rest of your life.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm pretty embarrassed just walking around day to day with this mustache. It's not very functional. I love it on the baseball field. I see pictures from games with it, and I say, man, that's awesome. And then every other second of the day, I regret it. But
It's how long does it take in the morning? Because you usually have it curly queued up, which I imagine that's got to be a lot of wax. How long does that take in the morning? Because I've tried to do it myself. I can't do it. It's not easily done.
yeah, I really only do it for games. So when I'm walking around during the day, it just looks like this, which isn't great. Honestly, it's probably more functional to just have it curled up, so it's not always bothering me when I'm eating. It'll get some food in it. I'll start chewing on hairs, but I kind of got the process down pat now. I mean, we've got a pretty tight schedule pregame. I wasn't really sure what my process with that was going to look like, so I just do it in the 5-10 minutes between the meal and hitters meeting now. So it really depends what it's gonna look like that day. It depends on how much time I've got. Sometimes I got 5 minutes, sometimes I got 20, and I just work with work with the time I got.
Yeah, it makes you think back in the day, you see pictures of all these old timey people, they got the curly key mustache just before phones, the amount
Yeah.
of time you had makes you think. But of course, we'll get into the baseball here in a moment. But one thing you did this week that was super cool was you went back to your old elementary school, Forest View, and you read a book to the third grade students, I believe it was, to prove one, which I think is great. Hey, come back to school. I've gone to college. I can read. This is how good I can read. Go back, prove you have the skill, but also, two, prove for the curly Q mustache that hey, it's not all cartoon evil villains. Some good guys can have this mustache. But getting back and reading to your school, what was that like? What was that experience like for you, being a Durham kid yourself?
Yeah, it was really, really special and really enjoyable for me. I hope the kids had as great a time as I did with it. It was something that I definitely wanted to do. Coming back home to Durham, I went to one of my high school's football games in the fall, which was really fun. Saying hi to everyone, old coaches, old teachers, and then Miss Mann, my third grade teacher, actually organized the whole thing. We had a Forest View Day at the ballpark on Saturday before our game against Clemson. Miss Mann threw out the third pitch. A bunch of the kids were there. That was awesome, and then being able to go in just 2 days later and actually interact with all the kids and spend some time with them was a lot of fun, and I really had a good time with it.
Yeah, and so Miss Mann was your third grade teacher. What was she a Duke fan, and was it something you knew going into it, or
Yeah, I don't remember her being too much of a Duke fan. Maybe she is. She's definitely a Duke baseball fan now. She actually admitted to me that she hadn't watched much baseball before before this year. So I'm glad we transitioned her.
Well, hey, you grew the game, which is always important. My third grade teacher was a very sweet woman by the name of Mrs. Walsh. Her favorite team was the New York Mets. And I haven't gone back to read to her because one, I haven't played for the Mets, and two, I still haven't fully learned how to read. But what book did you choose? Did you get to select the book? Did you know going in, or was it a surprise reading, like a pop quiz?
She told me that she would pick a few out for me. She had 4 options, and I told her whichever she thought might be the best for the kids, I'd be happy to read. And it was actually called The Book with No Pictures, which was interesting. She said the kids would love it, which I knew probably meant I wouldn't love it as much. And I was up there reading some gibberish, but got a lot of laughs out of the kids, so had a good time.
Yeah, it's a great book. Of course, I believe BJ Novak from The Office wrote that one.
That's correct.
I'm not very functional in the world of books or literature, but that's one I know because someone was on a show. But
Yeah,
that's a tough book to get through too, because you got to kind of paint the picture as the reader. So I got to say that's an impressive thing to do.
yeah. It was fun.
Now, getting into this season a little bit and shifting gears to talk about baseball, you and your Duke teammates have been off to an absolutely blazing start. And you kind of just hit the ground running, which is incredibly impressive to do in the ACC, and just kind of college baseball in general. Switching environments is tough, but you've done it while being a grad transfer. So, what has that process been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we all know how the game of baseball is, but being able to get off to a hot start has been really fun, especially in this Duke uniform that I've wanted to wear for a long time. But just looking at the whole team, I think we're all really happy with the way our offense has come together. Especially, there were a lot of question marks coming in. We had a lot of transfers like myself with a lot of college at bats, and then a lot of young talent, and we weren't sure how that was going to work together. But it's come together great. I think we're all really happy where we are offensively, and obviously we've got a stud pitching staff. So just being able to back them up offensively has been great. And I think we're all really excited with where we are.
Absolutely. And now talking about getting to Duke and choosing Duke when you're choosing in the transfer process, you mentioned being from Durham, getting to go back to where your hometown and where you're from, and getting to play baseball at the school you always dreamed of playing for. What was the process like in choosing Duke? What kind of went into that and your family ties to the university?
Yeah, it was a really easy decision for me. Being from Durham, having already created a relationship with Coach Pollard in high school, having a high school teammate play at Duke and a former Penn teammate play at Duke in his COVID year. It was a really easy decision. Once COVID happened a few years ago, it was something that I could kind of see on the horizon a few years down the line, being a grad transfer because we can't play as graduate students in the Ivy League. So when I entered the transfer portal in August of 22, before my senior season at Penn even started, it was a really easy decision. It happened very quickly, and I'm happy with the decision I made for sure.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it's working out well for you. I got to know because Duke, of course, a very hard school, Penn, incredibly hard school. What has the course transfer process been like where you're switching from classes at the Ivy League in an Ivy League school at Penn and then going to Duke, which, from my understanding, not an easy school either?
Yeah, it's definitely been different. I'm in graduate school here, getting a master's in management, which is business school. So it's definitely a lot different. I was a cognitive science major in undergrad, which is not as hard as it sounds. I really enjoyed it. Didn't think it was too difficult at all. And really, when people ask me, the schools probably won't like me saying this if they hear it, but I don't think that either have been too difficult. I think the hardest part is certainly getting in, and then once you do, I mean, you have the best professors in the world teaching you. So I haven't found any of the classes I've taken to be too difficult. I'm sure you could make it pretty hard if you wanted to, maybe majoring in computer science or math or something like that. But I never found any of the coursework to be too difficult.
I mean, that's a great way to put it because, you say, I don't want them to take offense to this, but the teachers did such a good job that it was easy. I mean, that's like the nicest compliment I feel like you could give a school. So, I
Yeah,
mean, great job there. But you said cognitive sciences or, okay.
yeah,
So,
cognitive science. Yeah, it's basically
so
kind of like psychology. I minored in consumer psychology too, which I think complemented it well. But it's technically interdisciplinary. I think between math, computer science, linguistics, psychology, and philosophy. So I took a few classes in each of those, but I really enjoyed it. Didn't think it was too hard.
I'm just laughing because, like, I think of those words, and those are all words that if I saw on a course schedule, I would say, nope, not going to that one. Nope, not doing that. We're just going to change. We're going to change study. We're going to change coursework here. But that's incredible. So you essentially studied the brain at an Ivy League institution. You did the same thing like brain surgeons are doing. It's the
I
exact same
wouldn't say
stuff.
that.
And you hit a lot of home runs while you did it. Now,
Yeah,
with being transferring from Penn to Duke, of course, at Penn, you get the smart and good at baseball guys. And at Duke, you have smart and good at baseball guys as well. Has there been a new teammate you have that you've been particularly impressed with this season?
obviously we all saw the video of Chad Knight reciting the World Series winners, and the first time I heard him do that at the house, it was obviously shocking. Pretty ridiculous that he's able to do that, and then became a little bit annoying while him and my roommate, who's a transfer from Princeton, Jackson Emus, both just started listing off random baseball facts that they know and that I don't even know exist. But obviously, Chad is very impressive. He's a super smart guy, and really just I've been very happy with everyone here at Duke, and I love all the guys on the team. And obviously, that's something that I was worried about coming in. At Penn, we're all very like-minded. I mean, pretty good at baseball, but all wanted to get a good education. And then the guys at Duke obviously are going to be similar, but are really good at baseball and have always been the best. So I wasn't sure how that those personalities are going to be, but I really love everybody on the team. It's been a great locker room to be a part of.
Yeah, I imagine just being at a baseball house, it sounds like sitting around and then one guy just starts rattling off all the World Series winners. In that environment, in that group, just I can't imagine looking around, everyone's like, is this guy right? Like, is he actually serious? Like, someone fact check. I'm not gonna because that seems like a lot of work. Like, I remember watching the video myself at home and I was like, yeah, probably. I mean, he's saying it with a lot more confidence than I ever. He could have just named random teams and I would have been like, yeah. So did someone like fact check it while it was going down?
Honestly, I never even felt the need to. Chad's done some other pretty ridiculous stuff. He created this model to evaluate players in the transfer portal that I know our coaches here have used, and I think some coaches at other schools have used. And he's basing it on some finance Sharp ratio thing that I don't know. He's going into investment banking. He wrote some paper about it, put it on Twitter. I'm sure you could go find it. I can't understand any of it, but I mean, he's a super smart guy. I never felt the need to fact check him on anything he's ever said. So
No, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. That sounds very on brand for a Duke baseball player, I will say. And I mean that as a very good thing because that it sounds like a very intelligent thing to be doing.
yeah, definitely worse things he could be spending his time on.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about wanting to play at Duke for a while and of course kind of being a fan of it. As college baseball players, we don't really get the time to sit back and just kind of be fans and just kind of be like, wow, looking around, this is cool because we're taught not to dwell on how far we've come, remember how far we're going, and all that stuff. But one of my favorite ways to dwell and one of my favorite things to dwell about was my favorite stadium. So, is there a particular stadium you're looking forward to going to this season?
Growing up, I was a huge UNC fan, believe it or not, which I
Mm.
probably shouldn't have said on here, but I
That's
had
all
them in
right.
my bracket
Look,
that I think they're starting in a tournament here in a few minutes. But yeah, so I'm looking. We don't play that this year, unfortunately, but I do have a sixth year because we didn't play in 2021 either in the Ivy League. So I'm planning on taking advantage of that. So I think we play at the Bosch next year. So I'm excited to play there. In the past, I mean, we were in the Auburn Regional at Penn last year. That was obviously super cool. And we opened the season at South Carolina, which I thought was a great environment. Founders was awesome. I think they averaged like 7,000 fans that weekend, and that huge scoreboard on the left seems like a mile away, but it's right on top of you. So I mean, I thought Founders is probably the coolest place I've played so far.
I'm with you. I still think Founders will be well, it will be the coolest place I ever played because I'm done. So I know, but it's such a sick environment. And you're right with the scoreboard, the way it's set up, it does feel right on top of you. It feels like an amusement park at times. Like it's
Yeah.
comical how nice it is. And I love UNC's field too because the way it's set up, the fans all feel like they're right on top of you. And even if it's not like 10,000 of them, it feels like a lot more than are actually there because of how close they are to you. So great answers there. I never understood why Jack Coombs Field wasn't open for business back when we were playing, but I thought that field was so cool. I love the way it's just kind of in the woods. It feels very backyard baseball-y to me in such a good way. So I'm glad that this season you guys have shifted back to playing there too.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I mean, I definitely wanted to play some games at the DBAP just being from Durham, but I got to play there in our scrimmage against NC State in the fall, which was a really special game just for me playing there. I haven't gone to Durham Bulls games growing up. I don't know if this is my information to share, but there is a project in the works at Coombs, the field on campus. So it's going to get some pretty serious renovations here in the next few years. I don't know how much of that I'm going to get to experience, but the future of Duke baseball is definitely bright.
Well, you love to hear it. And hey, if you got a 6 year, take it. Take all the years you can. If you want to go play pro baseball, do that. Of course, always have fun. We'll support you. But stay in college baseball as long as you can and as long as you want. I am the biggest advocate of that. It's so much fun being 24, getting to play against 18-year-olds sometimes because it's like
Yeah.
because sometimes it does get a little unfair. It's like, okay, 6 years, six of the most important years I've lived have happened between me and this guy. It's a good time. So definitely take advantage of it. But Ben, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and talk to us, and best of luck to you this weekend.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Now that was great. With Ben, I think my favorite thing is when I ask these guys, I typically ask them like, "Oh, who's surprised you the most this season? Who's impressed you the most? Who's someone, who's just really been off to a hot start?" And when I ask Ben who's someone who's impressed you, he just starts rattling off teammates who have done impressive, smart things, like Chad Knight rattling off all the different World Series winners and all sorts of different things. But that's one thing I love about college baseball is you never know exactly what you're going to get out of the players, and they always keep you on your toes. So that was a really funny answer. But Ben has just been a really fun guy to watch ball out at the college level. I remember watching him back in his Quake Show days, and he was an absolute savage. And he's got an Ivy League degree now. And I never knew that the Ivy League didn't allow graduate students to play sports. But with all these different guys transferring out, it's become abundantly clear that it is something that is there. And so I'm kind of grateful that the Ivy League doesn't allow these grad guys because it allows for us to see them play at a ton of different places and share that Ivy League baseball experience. But now that we've heard from Ben and had a great talk with him about what it's like to be able to read and, dream a little bit about what it must be like, how cool it must be to, be able to look at words and letters and just understand that they mean things. That sounds like a gift. But moving along, we're going to hear from one of our sponsors. And then after that, we will be joined by Maryland's Eddie Hacopian. Baseball barbecue started when a broken grill fork and a cracked bat came together to make the perfect grill tool. Now, Baseball Barbecue makes patented bat handle barbecue tools and cutting boards that are licensed for the best teams in college baseball. Fun and functional, Baseball Barbecue products are perfect for casual fans and serious grillers alike, and a great way to out tailgate your rivals. Visit baseballbarbecue.com/D1Baseball to find the perfect grilling gift for the college baseball fan in your life. What is going on, everyone? We are back with the Schoch Factor Podcast on the D1 Baseball Podcast Network, and we are back, and we are joined by one half of the Hacopian brothers, Eddie Hacopian. Eddie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, just living.
That's all we can do. That's all we're trying to do. Right now, you're living for the weekend, of course, looking ahead, getting ready for a big weekend with Michigan State, an exciting weekend at the Bob. We just went over both those topics. So, of course, they're coming back up, recency bias. But the field, I remember when I was little, growing up around Maryland, growing up around the park, I think it was heavily affiliated, heavily sponsored by the Green Turtle Bar and Grill or something like that. So in my mind, it was always the Turtle, but I'm glad you introduced me to it as the Bob. But Eddie, at the Bob, you were patrolling the right side of the infield. How has this season been different for you now that you have a year under your belt as a Maryland Terrapin?
Yeah, just being more comfortable. I think last year I kind of went into it a little more like trying to prove myself and try to prove to the other guys and the older guys that I was a guy that could really help the team win and just try to be a force in that lineup. It's just so nice coming back and just knowing kind of like my role and kind of what I have to do for this team and just getting to play every day. It's really the best.
Definitely. And so now that you're settled in, you've had a year under your belt, you go, you know what? I belong here. Obviously, I can mash some home runs. I can do all sorts of different things on the baseball field. I have earned my right. I am my own person because I'm sure coming into college, making the decision to come to a school like Maryland, especially for you, a school where your dad's played, the Hacopian name already is a big name there. So what was it like coming in where it's okay, the shoes are here. I've seen them. They've been by the doorstep my whole life. My dad's shoes. He ties them a little differently than me, but I'm going to fill them in. I'm going to make my own shoes. So what has that process been like for you at Maryland?
It was, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of a different route than a lot of people, and I had a tough route getting here. I had to go to play junior college in California for 2 years. Broke my hand the first year, just kind of like a COVID year, like 28 games. So broke my hamate bone that year. Kind of just went, kind of just said it was a wash. So I redshirted that year. And then my sophomore year in junior college, that was really tough because like the first 8 to 10 games, I wasn't playing. I wasn't playing a lot. Me and my dad were talking about maybe some D2s or D3s to go do. And then, one game, literally I got a spot start, one game against a lefty, and I went 3 for 4. And that was it. Like I had a 26 game hitting streak after that. And finally Maryland offered me, and that was kind of just a dream come true.
Absolutely. And I can't imagine the relief you're feeling, because I'm sure growing up, you're like, okay, being a Maryland Terrapin, that would be sick. And then you have your own recruiting process. And that's kind of, I feel like for me, that's when a lot of my fandom for schools dropped. And I was like, look, I am a fan of whoever will give me money, whoever will say, hey, you know what? Come play baseball for me. I'm a fan of that. But for you, it seems like it really came full circle. And as soon as you got that opportunity, you just hit the ground running. And that's kind of been the story of your career. So what was the feeling like of that big long game hit streak and you finally get that offer? What was that relief like?
It honestly, it happened so quickly, like unbelievably quickly. It was like for a while, it was just like, I don't know if I can do this, like, can I play at this level? And I always kind of had some internal belief that I could play. And my dad was kind of like my biggest fan growing up, and he always sort of like pushed me and instill like the faith in me that I can play at this level and I can really make an impact at this level. And I remember when I committed, we were on the bus. We were coming back from a tournament in San Luis Obispo. It's about 3 hours north of where my junior college was. It was in Orange County, Southern California, Cypress College. You want to shout out. But I remember we're on the bus and our coach gets on, or my coach texts me. He's like, "Did you just commit to Maryland?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He gets on the loudspeaker, or whatever the microphone speaker is. He's like, "Congrats to our second baseman for committing to Maryland." And kind of just there, it's kind of like, wow, like I really did it. It's like, I didn't think I could do it, or a lot of people didn't think I could do it, but I really did it. So just something I was super thankful about. Yeah.
That's such an awesome way to do it too. And to have a bus full of your JUCO teammates that fired up. I can't imagine how great that feels. But that little bit of psychoticness, I feel like, is what makes college baseball player. It's why like you can go to any school and get along with any player. It's everybody's just a little bit off, because I feel like to like this game and to truly pursue playing it at a high level, you kind of got to be just like super delusional about how life can go. And that's really, and then you kind of look around one day and you're like, oh my goodness, I did it. Like I committed to Maryland. I made it,
Yeah, it was really crazy.
Now of course, I'm sure you hear it all the time with your brother coming to the school and all the family ties. You see your brother, he comes out of high school and you're like, hey, why was your process so smooth? What did you instill in him that allowed him to go straight from high school to Maryland? Because I'm sure people are like, oh, well, he had it figured out earlier or something like that. But the credit goes to the older brother in teaching him, giving him the way,
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'd say is I don't know how much I really did for him, to be honest, but I think I can definitely 100% say I instilled a little bit of competitiveness in him. Just all the wiffle ball we play growing up, or we used to play in our living room with a little foam ball and one of those little souvenir bats. We throw from like 25 feet away. We throw like 100 to each other and just compete in that. And our parents would always yell at us because there's a big window at the end of the room, and we just smash balls off that window and stuff. And, we'd always get in fights about it. It's just kind of that competitiveness, and I really hope that he could say that I taught him some things, but I can't I can't think of anything right now.
I'm sure there's stuff in there. Is there a sport in the Hacopian household that you guys just weren't allowed to play? Like it got too intense. I know like football is a big one. That's like a run into the dresser sport for a lot of families out there.
I mean, I feel like I could say basketball. Maybe that would cause a lot of fights. We had a little basketball court in our backyard. That would cause some fights for sure. Because I'd always whoop his ass for sure. But he had me in baseball for a while, but I could be confident that I was better at every other sport. So um, all of them, to be honest, we would get super good. We used to play. We used to play with a real ball in our backyard with a window like 15 feet away, and those would get really competitive. And my parents would get pretty scared about that too. So.
That's fair. I mean, you raise the stakes, the competitiveness. You throw in a potential broken window, a potential, hey, you could lose this game and get grounded. That sucks, you know? So now you guys aren't playing with that pressure anymore. You guys are actually playing, working towards the team goal. So what has it been like having your brother on the team there with you?
I mean, really just kind of a dream come true. It's kind of surreal, to be honest. Just like if you told me 2 years ago that we'd be playing here at Maryland together, I would have been like, wow, that's not true. But it's really something else. Like it's really funny because I was telling my dad the other day, it's like damn, like this is fun, but it's also really hard because every time he's up and if he gets out, I feel like I got out. So just stuff like that. But it's been really awesome having him here, and I mean, you can see the way he goes about his business, like how far beyond his years he is, and he's just, I mean, he's elite. He's helping our team win, and that's something I'm very thankful for.
Definitely. And it seems like, you know, having the whole family ties and all that, it's just such a cool story. It makes our job easier as people who talk about the game because it gives us something really cool to talk about. But I want to know, of course, as you're getting older and you're getting more of your classes done towards your degree, you're going to get to a point where you only have so many classes left and there's going to be time for elective classes and things like that. You're playing baseball with your brother. Have you thought, you know, if we get to that point, we have those elective classes, would you take a class in college with your brother? Is that something that would ever be on your radar?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. I guess. I feel like we might have been in a class together last semester, but it wasn't an in-person class. It was online. But
Oh,
I would
okay.
always, I would get on his ass and be like, "Hey, did you do your homework this week? Did you get it in?" And just staying on him like that. And I'm sure down the road, we might have this together. So
Yeah, because I feel like you bring that brotherly competitiveness into the classroom. You guys end up, you're both doctors or lawyers or something along that, along those lines. It's that tenacity. Now, with this season at Maryland, of course, things have been going well. You guys have a new head coach, and it's a familiar face. It's a guy who he coached dudes I played with back in the day who played at Maryland, and I'm old and washed up. I'm well and retired. What has it been like with Coach Swope there at the helm with the reins in his hands?
I mean, he's the best. Like playing for him is really something special. You kind of feel safe behind him. You know, knowing he's the guy in charge, and he's always got your back, and it's really something special.
Definitely. Now, I got to know, I feel like if there were a competition for most Maryland baseball people, having your dad and Matt Swope in the same conversation, you're a very lucky person in the fact that you and your brother are both set up to have that Maryland pride instilled in you. I mean, like playing at the school, of course, it's going to happen, but now it's like you got 5 million gallons of it coming in, which is so awesome. Now, Maryland, of course, off to a good start. Have there been any teammates that have really stood out to you?
Um, that's a tough question. Let's see. There's so many guys. Let me try and pick. Yes. I can give you one. I'm gonna go with Logan Barrier, transfer from Longwood. He's kind of our closer right now, and every time he comes in the game, he just shuts the door. And I think he brings that fire and kind of tenacity that we kind of talked about, and competitiveness. And every time he's in the game, you're like, oh, we got this on lock. So definitely Logan Barrier for sure.
I feel like Barrier, that's a good last name for a closer too. It feels like just a right fit. Like it's going to protect me. It's safe. We're in good hands. But I always like to make guys give at least one compliment to their teammates before we close things out. But Eddie, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us here on the Schoch Factor podcast.
Yeah, anytime you want to bring me back on, I'm open to it.
I mean, I can't tell you how much money I'd give to be a fly on the wall watching the two Hacopian brothers competing in floor hockey, competing in floor baseball, whatever it may be, just absolutely terrorizing the household all on a daily basis, really. And I feel like it sounds like it was one of those houses where just like every day, either Chris or Eddie had to go up to mom or dad and be like, hey, by the way, you know that thing you like? It's broken. Don't know how that happened. But I hit a walk-off double, so that was cool. But it's just great to hear about what their upbringing was like and kind of what led them to being college baseball players for the same university that their dad played for, and just that really awesome experience that they've been having. And I've just been really happy for the Hacopian family as a whole. One, because parking at the University of Maryland, very tough. Being able to, go and see your two kids play for the same school and only have to take one car and only risk one parking ticket, that's huge. As someone who, every time I've been on the Maryland campus, as someone who grew up near it, I've gotten a parking ticket for $25. I've kind of just accepted it as the parking fee rather than going to the pay station. You kind of just wear it. But it's of course awesome for them to just be able to go to the Bob and see their two sons go and ball out. It's really cool. But that's all we have for this week's episode of the Schoch Factor podcast. Thank you so much to Eddie and Ben Miller. They have been up to just incredible stuff this season and off to really hot starts, which if you've looked into them, if you know anything about these two guys, that should not come as a surprise to you by any stretch of the imagination. But they're off to an amazing start, and I can't thank them enough for taking time out of their busy schedule to join us and share some insight as to what they're like as college baseball players. That's all we have for this week. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to our sponsors, Soldier Sports and Baseball Barbecue, for making sure we're always taken care of and the Schoch Factor podcast can continue to go on. And of course, thank you to our friends over at D1 Baseball for allowing the Schoch Factor podcast to be out there with all your podcasts that are smart and intelligible about college baseball. And thank you for letting us hop on here and have some fun. We'll make sure to have some fun throughout the rest of the week. It's going to be a great weekend in college baseball. Me, Jake, and Jordan will be back Monday for another episode. That'll come out on Tuesday, so we'll get together Monday. But make sure to stay tuned for that. And as always, thank you for tuning into the Schoch Factor podcast on the D1 Baseball Network. And I hope you have a great week.